Hello everybody, it's me Gaming 2, and I haven't done a tier list in like 6 months since December, so I figure it's time we do another 2 tier lists. The first one today is actually technically not formed by me, but I did make my own tiers, but anyways, today we are going to be doing my MCU tier list. This is just going to be the movies, not the TV shows. This is going to be every movie from Iron Man to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Last year I did an MCU ranking on my channel. Here you'll be able to see my updated opinions on movies that have come out since, like Thor Love and Thunder, Wakanda Forever, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. You probably know my opinion on some of them, but we're going to be seeing it in the form of a tier list now. So here we got my tiers, which is the top tier, Avengers Assemble, absolutely some of the best comic book movies of all time, if not some of the best movies of all time. Amazing is really good movies, but not perfect. They have a few flaws and stuff like that. Good movies I can perfectly enjoy when you put them on, but not ones I tend to rewatch all that often. Not movies I super enjoy, but they're not bad either. Bad is just movies that are not good at all. They don't have very many qualities, but they're not the worst things ever. Terrible, which there are going to be a couple, are movies I just can't find any redeeming qualities about. It's just a slog through and through. So let's get started. We'll start with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which I'm going to put in the bad category. Yes, I think this movie is a bad movie. I really do. I think Kang saves the hell out of this movie. If it wasn't for Kang, this film would probably be in the terrible tier. I never thought I was going to dislike an MCU movie more than, or I never thought that Ant-Man 3 was going to be worse than the second one, but it is. I do not like Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania that much at all, but Kang is what saves this movie from being terrible. It is bad. First of all, they made most of the characters super dislikable, except Scott. Except Scott Lang. He's the only character in the movie that's not dislikable. And Kang to an extent, too, but he's supposed to be dislikable. He's the villain. You got Cassie Lang, his daughter, who is an absolute friggin' prick in this film. You got Hope, who's also a prick. Even friggin' Hank Pym is dislikable in this film. You got the quantum realm, which is just overbearing, honestly. You can't really pay attention to what's going on because there's so much being shoved in your face, and it's like, I don't know. Bill Murray's character was very, very disappointing in this film. I can't believe I didn't like him that much in this film. Usually Bill Murray is very likable, but in this film, not really all that much. I just don't like Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. However, a film I do like, Avengers Endgame, Avengers Assemble. What a perfect ending to this franchise, or this universe. Honestly, the more and more I look at it, the more I think this is where it should have ended. Really, it should have ended here. You know, the movies from Phase 4 onwards just haven't been the same. Outside of Shang-Chi, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which all three of those films I love, they're just, most of the films are not even close to the films of Phases 1 through 3. Avengers Endgame, it's heartbreaking, it's heartwarming, the action, especially in the final battle, is the best comic book movie scene ever, in my opinion. This beats what was previously my favorite, probably before this film, which is actually not from the MCU, that would be the final battle from Spider-Man from 2002. That final battle was amazing to me, but because it's the first final battle I ever saw in a comic book film, I guess you can say, but to me, Avengers Endgame beats it bar none. This film, my god, everyone is at their best. Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, the Guardians when they appear. This film, it brings everyone together for one last big hurrah. And the more I look back at it, like I said, the more I think this should have just been the end of the MCU. There are amazing films since Endgame, but not very many. However, there are some films that are not that great that came before Endgame. Captain Marvel is one of them. But I will put it in because, for one, it has more overall likable characters than Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I liked Nick Fury. I liked Goose the Cat. I thought the visuals were pretty good. And, you know what? I don't think Carol Danvers or Captain Marvel was that bad. Sure, she was probably the weakest main character in the movie, but still, you know, she's not Halle Berry's Catwoman or friggin' any of the Fantastic Four films bad. You know, it's just not that great for the MCU. This is a film that I've only seen maybe 3 times, which is a pretty low number for the MCU, but I don't find Captain Marvel to be that bad. It's just nowhere near the best MCU movie. Ant-Man and the Wasp, not Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp. I'm really tough on putting it bad or eh. I think I am gonna put it at but lower than Captain Marvel. Ant-Man and the Wasp is not a film I'm a very big fan of, and I was fully suspecting I was gonna like Quantumania more than this film. Nope, not even close. But, because to me, the Ant-Man films just got worse and worse with every film, and Quantumania is not quite the worst film in the MCU, but it's among them. This film is not very good. For one, it's very boring, and I've seen this film as many times as I've seen Captain Marvel. 3 times. I don't remember a ton about this film. I remember the villain was named Ghost, I think? I'm not even sure about that. I saw this film when it came out in theaters. I saw it before Endgame, and I saw it before Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I will say this. The characters are way more likable in this film, at least. But I will say this film is more boring than Quantumania. And at least that film probably, I don't even know about that. I was going to say maybe it had better action, but I don't know about that. Like the last big San Francisco final battle in this film is pretty damn good. But I don't have too much to say about this film. It's just not that great at all. We go on to another great film, Avengers: Infinity War. Almost as good as Avengers Endgame. I just think Avengers Endgame is the perfect conclusion to this franchise, and it's where it should have ended. I think the action scenes are the best in the entire MCU as a whole movie in Infinity War. That final battle in Infinity War is almost as good as the final battle in Endgame, but the battles in general in Infinity War are better as a whole. As an Endgame, Endgame's final battle is the best of the entire franchise, but there's just more as a whole in quantity. Better battles. And Thanos, holy frick. This movie probably single-handedly makes him one of my favorite characters in the MCU. He was good in Endgame, but he didn't quite have as much substance as he has in Infinity War. Thanos is friggin' awesome in this film. The rest of the characters, everybody pretty much has their moments to shine. You got characters like the original Avengers, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, not really Hawkeye, but most of the original Avengers have their time to shine. You got characters like the Guardians of the Galaxy who have their time to shine. Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Black Panther. So many characters have their time to shine, but this is Thanos' movie. He absolutely dominates this movie, and you can truly see why. Avengers Infinity War is just such an awesome movie. Black Panther. I think it's good. It's a good movie. My issue with the movie is the CGI. I'm not really a big fan of how they did the CGI in this film. I think the villain, Killmonger, is amazing. I think Chadwick Boseman's performance as Black Panther is amazing. I think all the acting is great in this film. The world of Wakanda is just freaking stunning to look at. Especially when I saw it for the first time. I'm a big fan of, like, the geography of the African continent, so seeing that in a whole movie is just breathtaking. It's just, the CGI is honestly a big issue with this film. Like, the rhinos, you can clearly see they don't look realistic at all, and the fight scenes can have some kind of choppy CGI to it. But other than that, most of the rest of the stuff with this film is good, so I consider it a good movie. A bit overrated, yes, but it's a really good, enjoyable movie. Thor Ragnarok is going to go in amazing. I really like Thor Ragnarok. I think it is probably the best film that's going to be outside of Avengers Assemble. My only issue with Thor Ragnarok, and it's the single reason why I'm not putting it in Avengers Assemble, it's just the fact that I wasn't a huge fan of the villain in this film. Hela was pretty good, but not to the point where this is one of the absolute top 5 best of the MCU. This is in the top 10, without a question, but it's not quite my favorite because I wasn't a huge fan of the villain. Everything else, amazing. The fight scenes are amazing, especially the Colosseum battle with Thor versus Hulk. I love the soundtrack of this film, especially when they play Led Zeppelin. That's just chef's kiss. The CGI is pretty much better than it has any right to be. The acting is great, the set pieces are stunning. This film is an amazing movie, but the villain keeps it from being one of the best of the entire MCU for me. Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm gonna put in amazing also. I am gonna put it below Thor Ragnarok though. My issue with this film is actually an issue I didn't used to have with the film, but the more I grow up, the more I realize this. It's that, yes, it is what a lot of people have realized about the MCU Spider-Man. Sometimes he just doesn't feel like his own character. He feels like Iron Man Jr., basically, or Iron Boy Jr. is what most people call him. And the more I grow up, the more I realize, yeah, they're kind of right. And that's not to say he's bad. He's good. He's good at what Tom Holland is excellent at Spider-Man. But I really wanted to see him on his own a little more. Pretty much throughout the entire movie. Outside of maybe the final battle against the Vulture, he's being tutored by Iron Man, basically. And I could have maybe seen that in Captain America Civil War in his very first appearance. That was more acceptable. But by this movie, I think you wanted to kind of see him a little more on his own, which each Spider-Man movie, you get that a little more and more, but to me, I just wish we saw Spider-Man on his own a little more. But I really like this film. I think it's an amazing movie, honestly. I think the visuals are awesome. I think Michael Keaton as the Vulture is amazing. Probably in Phase 3, next to Killmonger and Thanos, he's the best villain. He's really intimidating. His costume is cool. He's exactly how I wanted the Vulture to be in a live-action movie. He's the best part of the movie. I like Peter's friends in this film. I like Ned and MJ. Kind of is enhanced with Far From Home and No Way Home, but this film alone, they're still pretty likable. This film is by far the most... It's probably the most kiddish MCU movie. There's mentions of porn in this film and stuff like that, but it's probably the most kid-friendly MCU movie out of them all. Well, I will say it's nowhere near that with the other two, especially No Way Home. But I really thoroughly enjoy Spider-Man Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man... What the... Ugh, I have a brain fart today. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. That's my least favorite Guardians film, but it's still good. Ego the Living Planet is pretty lackluster villain, honestly, and the change of tone in the film, it's just so dark. It's kind of like Family Guy. It's so dark that you can't even really enjoy it. It's like, okay, this is not what this is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be this freaking really dark film, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is a dark movie, but it handles the darkness a lot better than this film does. This film has good action scenes, it has good... The Guardians are just as good as ever. Like I said with my ranking, I wish the Guardians were a little more together in this film. They're kind of more separated, which... You get that in Volume 3 too, but it's a little more acceptable there because the story kind of makes it more acceptable and it fits more into the story, I guess you could say. Here, it just kind of feels a little bit like, why aren't the Guardians more together in this film? So overall, I like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, but it's by far the worst of the movies. I'm actually going to put Doctor Strange in the exact same category. It's good. It's a good movie. I love the visuals in this film. It's by far the best part of the movie. Benedict Cumberbatch as Stephen Strange is awesome. I like a lot about this movie. The thing I don't like about this movie is it feels extremely formulaic. Like, it's just the most formulaic MCU movie ever. It's like, to me, it honestly feels kind of like a Phase 4 movie. Because a lot of them feel very formulaic, in my opinion. While this feels a lot more like that than Phase 3. Most of Phase 3 doesn't feel as formulaic as this film. This one just does. I don't have a ton more to say about Doctor Strange. All I'll say is it's a pretty good movie. Civil War. I'm gonna put this in Avengers Assemble. It's an awesome movie. This will probably be the lowest tier in the Avengers Assemble tier, but it's still awesome. Absolutely awesome movie. This film is the very first movie I ever reviewed on this channel. This film came out literally a few days after my channel started in April of 2016. I remember the memories for this film on par with Infinity War and Endgame. How kids at my school were talking about this film and whose team they would be on, either Team Cap or Team Iron Man. I liked the overall team of Team Iron Man a little bit better. I'm just a bigger fan of Captain America in general, so I just still had to go with Captain America, but I like Team Iron Man as a whole team more. But a lot of people went for Iron Man. I knew a couple of kids who wanted to go for Captain America, so I was kind of on the less popular team, but I just felt like I knew the plot of the movie, and I agreed with Captain America's statements a little more that, hey, the citizens need help. Screw the law. We should go save the world. We don't have to worry about this stupid law. But Iron Man wants to listen and stuff. So, anyways, that's kind of a gibberish explanation of the movie. But, dude, the action scenes, especially the final especially the airport battle in the middle of the movie is awesome. You get to see Tom Holland's Spider-Man for the very first time. You get to see Black Panther for the very first time. You get to see Ant-Man only for the second time. You get to see all these MCU characters come together. Not as grand as Infinity War Endgame, because you don't have Hulk or the Guardians or Thor and stuff like that. But you get to see these mostly ground level heroes all fight each other in this movie, and it is awesome. Captain America Civil War is by far my favorite of the Captain America films. Black Panther Wakanda Forever. My opinion on this film has gone down a bit. I don't know if I'm going to put it in or good. I think it's just on the cusp of being good. There's a lot of good things about this film, especially Namor, but I don't know. I still kind of feel like, I don't know. To me, I don't know if this film should have been made without Chadwick Boseman. I don't know. I think it does him very respectfully, and I very much appreciate that. It's very respectful towards the death of Chadwick Boseman, which rest in peace. But I still don't know if this film should have ever been made. You know, I think they should have just... They did kill off his character, but I think maybe they should have mentioned that maybe even in the next Avengers film, and just leave his character be and rest in peace. Not that I don't like Shuri, I do, it's just... I don't know. I feel like they should have just let his character be, kind of. But there's cool action scenes. I like Namor. I like Shuri. I love the post-credits scene with little T'Challa. But to me, I really like this film, but the original is an overall better movie. I know I said I think I like this more than the original, but I rewatched this back in March, and I like the original better. Ant-Man, the best of the Ant-Man films by far, but it's still only going in good. The film is funny, it's a lot of fun to watch and stuff like that. I really, really like the scene where Ant-Man meets the Falcon for the first time. I think that's a funny scene. But still, to me, it's just one of the Ant-Man films. It's a smaller MCU movie. The action isn't especially great. I like the final battle on the Thomas train, but still, to me, you're just not getting as much as, say, an Avengers Endgame or a Captain America Civil War or a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. It's just very simple. Avengers Age of Ultron, the worst Avengers film, but I still enjoy it. Actually, I'll probably put it in between. I'll put it in between Guardians 2 and Wakanda Forever. I think it's good. It's definitely enjoyable. I love Ultron in this film, but to me, this film sort of just feels like probably a little too small scale, I guess you can say, compared to the other three Avengers films. You know, the other three is the first film, the Avengers are fighting against all sorts of aliens and Loki, who is really powerful and stuff like that. Infinity War, they're fighting against friggin' Thanos. And Endgame, they're also fighting against Thanos, but a different universe version, basically. Or 2014 Thanos. Here, to me, Ultron is really cool, I'll admit it, but the whole final battle is probably the weakest out of all the Avengers films. I feel like the action is the weakest in all the Avengers films. To me, for an Avengers film, I've come up with my answer. It just feels a little too small scale. If there was a little more to this film, I would enjoy it more. I like that this is the introduction of the Scarlet Witch and the one appearance of Quicksilver that's not in WandaVision, I mean, the one appearance of the MCU Quicksilver in this film. To me, I'm just gonna give this film, it's good, but it's not great. Guardians of the Galaxy, wow. You're not gonna believe that I put this film above Infinity War, but I do. This film kicked off my love for the MCU. If it wasn't for this film, I may have not really watched many MCU films. This film got me excited to go see every single MCU movie that I possibly could. I love this film. I think it's awesome. I love especially the whole team of the Guardians working together to just stop Ronan the Accuser. The action is great in this film. This film is hilarious. It's even got a few emotional scenes. This film, it's honestly nostalgic for me. This film is not even 10 years old, but this film holds a lot of nostalgia for me. Because if I didn't ever watch this film, I probably wouldn't have been as big of an MCU fan as I am now. Next, we'll talk about the most overrated MCU movie. Yeah, I'm sorry. Whew. Okay. I'm probably gonna get in trouble for this one. I don't know, guys. Honestly, to me, Captain America the Winter Soldier is just... I've said it about other MCU films. I wish there was just more to it. Like, I like the action scenes in this film. I like how all the characters are betrayed. This film just... I don't know. I guess I want a little more... This film is sort of just the really, really ground level heroes and stuff like that. And I guess it just doesn't entertain me as much. In terms of how the movie is made as a movie, I think it's probably in the top 10, but as a whole, as an MCU film and a comic book film and a movie all combined, this is just not my cup of tea. What even is this film? What even is this film? How could you go from this film to Ragnarok, which is one of the best MCU movies, not the absolute best, but it's one of the best, and then you go to this. This film is not the worst movie ever made or anything, but for the MCU, this is among the worst. There's just not a lot good for it. Chris Hemsworth does not give as much of a good performance as later appearances as Thor, even in the Avengers. All the rest of the characters are just boring and forgettable. The action scenes are nowhere near as good as the rest of the MCU. The CGI moments in this film are kind of hard to look. This film, to me, it's a perfect thing to make you fall asleep. Iron Man 3. I'm gonna say it's good. It's pretty good. The one thing I will say about this film, though, that I'm not a huge fan of is, I guess you could say it's that the story isn't quite as polished, and I don't like what they do with the Mandarin in the film, and that he's always really not the Mandarin. Well, we've been excited to see the Mandarin, so why can't he be the real Mandarin? I don't know, but I'm not a huge fan of that aspect of the film. And other than that, I know that this film has its fans that have been coming up lately, but to me, Iron Man 3 is not the worst MCU movie by far. There's a lot of films that are actually worse than it, but it's nowhere near the best either. The Avengers. I'm going to put The Avengers in amazing. I'm going to put it in between Spider-Man Homecoming and Thor Ragnarok. To me, this film is amazing. It was so awesome to see this movie in theaters in 2012. I believe I saw this film the day after it came out. I was only 10 years old when The Avengers came out, so I was a really young kid. I loved seeing Hulk on the screen and Captain America. I loved seeing these heroes all together. This film is really nostalgic for me. Maybe next to Guardians of the Galaxy, this is the most nostalgic MCU movie for me. I wasn't quite into the whole universe as a whole. I wanted to see a second Avengers film when that eventually came out, but I don't know if I necessarily wanted to see the solo Captain America films or like another solo Iron Man film or something like that. Didn't quite get me to that level of excitement. But this film came out when I was in elementary school, and it was such a blast seeing this film for the first time. It was one of the last films I saw in a theater that I used to go to very often as a kid. It was one of my most nostalgic movie theaters. It used to be what they call a Clearview Cinema. This is one of the last films I saw in it before it shut down, but I have a lot of memories of this film, and it's just an amazing movie. Captain America 1. Yeah, actually, I'm going to put this in between Age of Ultron and Guardians 2. This film is pretty good. I love the aesthetic of the 1940s in this film, and Red Skull is pretty cool to see. I like him more in Infinity War when he appeared, but... Or no, he appeared in Endgame. God dang, what? It was Endgame. Yeah, it was Endgame he appeared in, not Infinity War. I like him more when he appeared in Endgame, but still, this film was really cool. I love the 40s aesthetic. I love seeing Chris Evans as Captain America for the first time. I'm not a huge fan of the action in this film, and it does slog a little bit. But that's what I feel about a lot of the Phase 1 MCU films, is that it takes a while to get to the best film in Phase 1, which is the Avengers, but I still enjoy this film enough. Thor. Not really my cup of tea. There's not a lot I like about this film. It's not bad. I like a lot of the action scenes in this film, but to me, like I said, this film is just not my cup of tea. Iron Man 2. Also gonna be an eh. I like seeing Don Cheadle as War Machine, finally. I don't remember a lot about this film, honestly. This is one of the MCU films I've seen the absolute least. So I don't remember too much. I remember seeing this film in 2010 when it first came out, and I remember seeing it in 2019 before Avengers Endgame. I watched all of the MCU movies before Endgame. This, I don't remember a heck of a lot about it. Thor Love and Thunder. You may be surprised to see this, but I'm putting it in the good category. I will actually put it, I'm going to put it in between Wakanda Forever and Iron Man 3. I think there's a lot of good aspects to this film. The tonal shifts in this film are very jarring, honestly. It goes from very dramatic to very funny in the matter of like seconds. One of the big things I don't like about this film is it was marketed that the Guardians of the Galaxy were going to be in this film. They're in it for like 7 or 8 minutes, and then that's it. And then it's just Thor goes back and feels honestly like a sillier version of the first 2 Thor movies. And the fact that this is my second favorite Thor movie says something, but it's still nowhere near as good as Ragnarok. If you'll excuse that screen, I don't know if it appeared on the screen recorder. I apologize about that. It's just some weird flashing screen that's been on my computer for a few months. Alright, we don't have a heck of a lot left. We're going to go with Incredible Hulk next, which I consider to be... No, you're going in eh. You're going to go slightly above Thor because I feel like the Abomination and Hulk final battle is a little more entertaining, but sort of like Thor, there's not a heck of a lot I remember about this film, and the rest of the film outside of that final fight is not especially all that great. I don't have a heck of a lot to say about this film. As of most of the MCU's Phase 1, Iron Man, though, Iron Man is an amazing film. It set up the entire MCU. It's the very first film in the MCU. The action scenes are awesome. They're a little more 2000s-like because this is one of 2 MCU films to come out in the 2000s. So the effects are not as good as, say, Infinity War, Endgame, and they're teensy bit dated, but not too much. Not to the levels of, like, the early 2000s comic book films, but it's a little tiny bit dated to me. So you got that on it, and honestly, I haven't seen this film too many times. I've seen it probably 5 or 6 times, but there's some MCU films that I watch 3 or 4 times a year. This is one I maybe put on every 2 years or so. So it's not my favorite MCU movie, as I do feel like it's a tiny bit dated, but There are some really good aspects of this film, like Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man in the action scenes. It's just, you kind of feel like this is the very first film in the MCU. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, not a fan of this film. I'm not. I have said it time and time again. You probably know my disappointment with this film. I don't like this film, but it is not the worst of the MCU. I'm going to put it in between Ant-Man and the Wasp and Iron Man 2. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness has some good aspects to it. The visual effects are honestly really good. Doctor Strange himself is really good. I think that's about all the nice stuff I have to say about this film. This film is the most disappointing MCU film of all time. This is supposed to introduce the multiverse, the big aspect of this entire saga of the MCU. And you don't really get a lot of substance with that. It doesn't give you a lot. Yeah, he goes through a fair amount of multiverses in the span of like a minute, but most is just spent in one multiverse. It's super disappointing. The characters that we do see, John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic is honestly fantastic, but most of the rest, I don't really care about the cameos. I think Wanda Maximoff is pretty cool in this film, but it's a little bit jarring to see her as the main villain a little bit after she's been good through most of the MCU. I feel like she's not bad, but I don't know. Most of the new characters are not entertaining, and this film is just set up to be so much more than it actually is. That's why I consider it eh. Spider-Man No Way Home, what an awesome movie. Wow. This is the Spider-Man movie I wanted. This film saw all the Spider-Man come together into one movie, or all the live-action Spider-Man, if you don't count the 70s show version. Seeing Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and Tom Holland all together against all the old villains played by all their original actors. What an amazing time. All the acting is great. It's got so many emotional scenes. The story is actually done extremely well. This is the best the MCU Spider-Man characters have ever been. I really don't have a lot of flaws about this. Honestly, it's a bit nitpicky, my one single flaw with this film. I wish we got a little more. Honestly, I just wish we maybe had 15-20 minutes more of seeing Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man, and all the other villains in this film. If we saw that a little more, I would probably be my second favorite MCU movie behind Endgame. But to me, this film, there's almost no flaws except that one nitpicky flaw. Yeah, no, this film, no thanks. It's the most forgettable MCU film, even though this film is not even 2 years old yet. This film came out in 2021. I don't remember much of a damn thing about this film. It's boring. The characters don't intrigue me at all. There's nothing to this film, really. It's just nothing for me. Not a lot I like about this film. You know what, though? I think Shang-Chi is amazing. And I'll put it over Spider-Man Homecoming. I think the action scenes are amazing in this film. I think Shang-Chi is awesome. I think all the characters are awesome. The Awkwafina character could be a little better. And I think I guess if the film had a little more, I wish it had a little more action. It's got a lot of just scenes where the characters talk, I guess you could say. If it had a little more action to it, which got a lot, but a little more, may have even put this in Avengers Assemble. This is an awesome movie, but to me, it just could have a little more to it. Black Widow. I'll probably put it in between Ant-Man and the Wasp and Captain Marvel. I like finally seeing that Black Widow got her own solo movie, but it's not the best executed movie. I feel like David Harbour's character is awesome. I feel like this is just feels like it's kind of going to be a big setup movie to the Thunderbolts, and that's okay, but for this being probably Scarlett Johansson's final appearance as Black Widow, I feel like there could have yet again been a little more to this movie. Alright, we got 2 more films left. We got Spider-Man Far From Home. My least favorite of the MCU Spider-Man films, but it's grown on me. It honestly has grown on me. It's almost just down to good, but I think there's enough to call it actually a pretty amazing movie nowadays. I watched this film about a month ago when I decided to watch all the MCU Spider-Man movies again, and upon this rewatch, this has been by far my favorite time I've watched the movie. It's been by far my most favorable viewing. Like I said, what I don't like about this movie is how much we get of Spider-Man. You don't really see him that much in the first half of the movie. It's mainly just Peter Parker Goes to Europe, the movie. But, you know what? I've learned to kind of enjoy those Peter Parker Goes to Europe, the movie scenes. You know, it's a little bit cheesy, especially the scenes with Ned and Betty Brant being a couple. But, you know, there is that scene against the water elemental in Venice, which I found really cool. I do like the bus scene where Peter uses his webs against the drone strike. I like that scene. It is, like I said, my least favorite of the MCU Spider-Man films because I do wish we got a little more Spider-Man in the film. But Mysterio's scenes in the second half of the movie, best part of the movie. This is probably on par with a lot of the really good scenes in No Way Home. Not quite, but it's close. I've grown to like Spider-Man Far From Home a lot more than I used to. It's still not my favorite MCU movie, but it's thoroughly enjoyable. And last but not least, on this list, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I think we're going to put it here. This film is such a great conclusion to the Guardians trilogy. Seeing the tragic backstory of Rocket Raccoon, if you're an animal lover, this is going to break your frigging heart. The action scenes are awesome. You see a despicable villain. The tone is dark in this film, but at least it's dark throughout the entire thing, pretty much. So you don't get all of a sudden tonal shift like you do in Volume 2. All the characters are at their best. They all get the best conclusions they possibly can. Especially Star-Lord, who reunites with his grandfather. That's such an amazing scene. I honestly think this isn't quite as good as the original for me. But this film is good enough to be on the top tier for me in Avengers Assemble. I love the hell out of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And it just barely does, but it makes my top 5 favorite MCU movies. What an amazing film. Alright, now we are going to get on to my ranking, which goes Thor, The Dark World. No. Eternals. What a boring film that just came out 2 years ago and I can barely remember crap about it. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Such dislikable characters and surprisingly boring for how visual the world is, but Kang is awesome. Thor. It's boring. I don't have much more to say about that. Hulk, the Incredible Hulk. The Abomination vs. Hulk scene is awesome, but the rest of the movie is not. Iron Man 2. Don't remember much about this movie. All I remember is it's the introduction of War Machine played by Don Cheadle, so that's cool. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. The most disappointing MCU movie, in my opinion. It really should have been a lot more for being the big introduction to the multiverse in this franchise. I know it wasn't the introduction, but this was supposed to be a lot more than it actually was. Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's pretty boring. Despite having a pretty good final battle, it's definitely one of the... Actually, it is my least favorite film in Phase 3, which is my favorite phase, so that says something. Black Widow. It's cool to see Black Widow finally get her own solo movie. However, the execution is not the greatest. Captain Marvel. I think it's a bit overhated, honestly. I don't think it's... I don't know. I think Captain Marvel herself is pretty good, but I do understand the criticisms. The action scenes are not as good as some other MCU movies. This film, though, pretty good. Captain America, The Winter Soldier. The most overrated MCU movie, in my opinion. I guess I'm just not as big of a ground level fan as some are. Iron Man 3. I enjoy this movie, but I don't really like the Mandarin twist in this film. Thor: Love and Thunder has a lot of mix of being dramatic to funny in like 5 seconds, which is what I don't like, but seeing Chris Hemsworth Thor, especially since Thor Ragnarok, just puts a smile on my face. Wakanda Forever. I'm sorry to anyone, but this film just feels like a film that should have been left alone. After Chadwick Boseman died, I think you should have mentioned it, but maybe mention it in Avengers: The Kang Dynasty or something like that. And I don't know. I really feel like, you know what I'm trying to say, right? That I feel like you can't really replace T'Challa, in my opinion. But it's got a lot of good aspects to it, so I enjoy it. Avengers: Age of Ultron, the worst Avengers film because it feels way more small scale compared to the other three, but Ultron is really cool and I enjoy the film overall. Captain America: The First Avenger. Love the 40s aesthetic. The rest of it I'm not a huge fan of, except Chris Evans as Captain America is as good as he's... Not as good as he's been in future films, but he was good. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Again, the worst of the franchise, but enjoyable still. I just don't like Ego. Doctor Strange. Love the visuals. I like Stephen Strange, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, but feels very formulaic. Ant-Man. The best Ant-Man film, but still, you know, it is an Ant-Man film. It's very simplistic. Black Panther, a film I really enjoy. But the thing about it is the CGI is to be desired, honestly. Spider-Man: Far From Home, a film that's really grown on me and I really, really like it now. But I can't forget that Spider-Man is not in this movie as much as he should have been. Iron Man, the first MCU film ever, has awesome action scenes, an awesome performance by Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, but it feels a tiny bit dated. Spider-Man Homecoming. It's a really good start for Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I do see the Iron Man Jr. complaints more now as I'm an adult, but still a really, really good movie. Shang-Chi. A lot of awesome action scenes. If there was a few more action scenes rather than just expedition scenes, I guess you could say, I would have probably maybe even put this in Avengers Assemble. Because the action scenes in this film are some of the best in the entire MCU. The Avengers. I will never forget seeing this film at 10 years old and loving it. Didn't have as much of an impact on me as Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's an awesome film. Thor Ragnarok. This film is awesome. So many cool fight scenes, and the visuals are awesome. I love the humor in this film and the Colosseum battle between Hulk and Thor. Let's just say I'm not a huge fan of Hela. And these, to me, are the best of the best MCU films. Captain America Civil War. This film, it's very important to me. It's the first MCU film to come out after my YouTube channel started, so it's the first MCU movie I ever reviewed on this channel. The action scenes are amazing. Seeing so many characters come together, probably even more of a shock than like the first two Avengers films. This film is awesome, and it starting to hold a bit of nostalgia for me. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, a perfect conclusion to the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. I love seeing all these characters together one last time, and it's hard to watch, but it's an incredibly made film. Spider-Man No Way Home, the best MCU Spider-Man film and one of the best Spider-Man films, period. I love seeing all the Spider-Men come together, all the old villains come together, and it's awesome to see these characters again. I don't know if it is one last time. If it is one last time, this is the last time we see some of these characters, I'm satisfied, but I would love to see Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man again, and all the villains too. Avengers Infinity War. This building up for 10 years to this epic film with so many great fight scenes and the best MCU villain, period, and Thanos. What an awesome film. Guardians of the Galaxy, my most influential MCU film. This film means the world to me. Such good action scenes. I love seeing these characters all together and banter off each other. This film is amazing, but not Avengers Endgame, which is my favorite MCU film. This film just concludes the MCU perfectly. And the more the MCU goes on, the more I wish this was the end. Perfect ending battle, perfect ending scenes. There is not as much action as you'd actually expect, but the basically more relaxed scenes are perfect because it sets up the story perfectly. I love the hell out of this film, and it is in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. So I hope you guys like this tier list. I don't think the next one is going to be as long. That should be out. I'm going to take a little bit of a break because I've been talking for over an hour. I'll probably be back within an hour to film tier list B. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. That's about it. Gaming Do here. See you later. Bye.